With the return of the Empire to the Old World, the city of the White Wolf is getting its turn in the spotlight, with the traditional red and white studio scheme of Talabheim being replaced with the white and blue of Middenheim. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to get your army ready. Whether you're an old returning player or just starting out with your state troops, this video is for you. Let's get cracking. I've begun by base coating my model with Corax White as a good, cold, off-white base colour for the blue and white uniform. I'm going for a quartered scheme on this model, so pick which areas you want to be white, and we're going to paint Apothecary white contrast paint over those areas to give us some shading. I'm applying this straight out of the bottle. Once this is dry, you can see we have some subtle shading. To re-establish the white base tone, I'm going to thin down Corax White to a glaze, and reapply this over the flatter areas to bring back some brightness, leaving the recesses shaded. Then with White Scar, I'm going to edge highlight any folds in the fabric, and also the edges in the cloth. As an optional final step, you can thin this White Scar down to a glaze also, and apply some thin layers on the flatter higher points, such as the shoulders and tops of the thigh. This will bring even more subtle brightness to the white, and tone down the starkness of the edge highlighting. And then your white cloth is done, that simply. For the blue, begin with a base coat of Macragge Blue. Even over white, you might need multiple coats to achieve an even finish, but just keep your paint thin and wait for one layer to dry before applying the next until you have a strong, even coverage. And obviously be careful not to go over any of the white you just painted. Then, shade the blue with Drakenhof Nightshade thinned with equal parts Larmian Medium. To re-establish the blue, paint Macragge Blue back over the fabric, leaving the recesses shaded. With a 50-50 mix of Macragge Blue and Rust Grey, thinned to a glaze consistency, we're going to start brightening the cloth, focusing on the higher and flatter areas. With pure Rust Grey, we're going to edge highlight the folds and creases in the fabric. Then, thinning this down to a glaze, apply a very thin layer over the flatter areas. With a 50-50 mix of Rust Grey and Blue Horror, apply some final edge highlights on the folds and creases, leaving some of the previous edge highlights visible. And then finally, spot highlight the most prominent points with pure Blue Horror. And with that, the fabric is completed, and with it the most dominant part of the model. Turning to the armour, base coat any iron with lead belcher. For most models this will be the breastplate, maybe a helmet and any weapon heads and blades. For any bronze areas, such as the armour trim and, in the case of this model, things like the lamp hanging from the belt, base coat these with Hashut copper. For the iron, we want a cold blue steel to tie into the colour scheme for the model. As such, we're going to shade any lead belcher areas with Griff Charger Grey contrast paint. Once this is dry, we can apply a second layer more selectively around things like rivets to darken these even further. You can also apply a second layer around the blades to simulate a true metallic metal effect. Shade the copper areas with Carroburg Crimson. Highlight the steel with Stormhost Silver on any edges and rivets. For sharper edge highlight, we can turn the model like so and run the side of the brush along the edges. We can also use Stormhost Silver to apply some fine scratches to the weapons and armour, simulating use. For the copper, begin by highlighting with Liberator Gold. Then, with Auric Armour Gold, apply finer highlights. And finally, with a 50-50 mix of Auric Armour Gold and Stormhost Silver, spot highlight the most prominent points. We want to be quite sparing here to keep the overall effect gold rather than silver though. Finally, to simulate a warm light coming from the lamp, I'm going to apply Tesseract Glow into the windows. We can now turn to any remaining details. Many of the models have scrolls and parchments attached to them. Begin by base coating these in Wraithbone. Also use Wraithbone to base coat any feathers. Then shade the parchment with a 50-50 mix of Aggaros Dunes contrast paint and contrast medium. At this point, if you're enjoying this tutorial, please do like and subscribe, it really helps, and let me know in the comments below what tutorial you might like me to do next. For the feather, shade with Skeleton Horde. This is quite a thin contrast paint, so can be used undiluted. Highlight the parchments and feather with Wraithbone again, leaving the creases and deeper areas shaded. Finally, highlight the edges of the parchment areas with Pallid Witch Flesh. As an optional final touch, you can paint some details and stripes on the feather with wildwood. Turning to the brown area and also wood areas, paint both of these with dryad bark. This will be any belts and straps and weapon hafts. Edge highlight these with a 50-50 mix of dryad bark and baneblade brown, leaving the centres of the belts darker. And finally, apply even finer edge highlights with pure baneblade brown. For the black leather, begin with a base coat of Abaddon black. Some of the state troops of course don't have any shoes, a design choice for which the less said the better. We can also use this to paint fine lines of text on the parchment areas. Highlight the leather with a 50-50 mix of Abaddon black and Dawnstone. Then apply a finer edge highlight with pure Dawnstone. And finally, apply spot highlights with Administratum Grey. All that's left to paint now is the skin, and we're going to go with a pale flesh colour here, perfect for the frostbitten north. Begin with a layer of flayed one flesh. Then apply a layer of Guilliman flesh contrast paint all over. Once that's dry, re-establish the flayed one flesh base colour, leaving the recesses between the fingers etc. shaded. With a 50-50 mix of flayed one flesh and screaming skull, pick out the features of the face, the ridges and tendons of the fingers. And finally, with pure screaming skull, spot highlight the most prominent features: the knuckles, the chin, bridge of the nose and eyebrows. With white scar, paint the eyes and teeth. and then dot the eyeballs with Abaddon black. All that's left to do now is base your model in your chosen scheme, and you're finished. And there we are, a super simple but effective way to paint Middenheim soldiers. Are there any other states you'd like to see me paint next? Let me know in the comments below. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time, and until then, happy painting.